Rin and Sae Itoshi are the most known brotherly duo in the Blue Lock community, and with the upcoming U20 World Cup, everyone's wondering when Sae will make his debut once again in the manga, since he hasn't been shown since he started carrying the U20 team in the Blue Lock vs U20 game. And what everybody wants from his debut really is just answers. You know, why he left Rin the way he did, why he chose Shido instead of Rin, and things like that. Today I'm going to be trying to answer these questions, as well as the questions of if Sae is actually a bad brother like people say he is. But before we get into the video, of course make sure to like the video if you enjoy it, and subscribe to my channel since I make Blue Lock content quite often and it's pretty high quality in my opinion, so you should also check out some more. Now before we answer any of these questions, we have to get into the Itoshi brothers themselves and how they grew up. Basically, their backstory. We see that from a very young age, Sae Itoshi was an amazing soccer player, playing on a small team in his town and having multiple trophies. And it's important to note that at this time, he was playing at the striker position. In fact, he has the exact mindset of a striker, with him saying that he'll be the best in the world and anything else is worthless. And Rin going on to say that his big brother really hates losing. But we see that one day, he kicks the ball over to the goal box and it basically goes too high for anyone else to get, and Rin comes out of nowhere when it goes lower and kicks the ball into the goal. And in the novels, they actually say that this is Rin's very first goal. Mind you, this wasn't a game that Rin was in originally, and since he wasn't in the game, the other kids started yelling at him and basically telling him to stay out of the game, but Sae just tells him to stop and goes over to Rin and calls him awesome and asks him to play soccer with him. He then says that Rin can be the most amazing after him, and this is where their journey really begins. They began playing together on the same team and whatnot, and scored a lot of amazing goals with their chemistry. After they finished their game, Sae asks Rin what does he think about while playing soccer, and Rin replies, nothing really, just about scoring goals I guess. I just run to the bad area and then you pass to me. But Sae asks him what is the bad area, and Rin replies, the area where the enemy panics and can be broken. And Sae tells Rin that he actually relies too much on his intuition, but Rin counters this by saying it doesn't matter since Sae always passes it to him. But Sae then says, what do you do when I leave? Rin jokingly replies that he'll probably find a replacement, but as we know, that's not really possible. Someone like Sae can't really be replicated, and this is shown in the novels after Sae leaves. We see that in the novels, during Rin's simulated practice with his team, for some reason he couldn't make shots like he used to, and when it came to matches and simulated practice, he just couldn't seem to get a good combination with his teammates, and he basically felt like he wasn't progressing at all. And later on in this novel, we see that what Sae was worried about is actually true. Rin relies way too much on his older brother, and in fact, this novel says that Rin felt like he was fighting alone in his games since no one could keep up with his movements, and his line of attacks break before reaching the goals. And since at this time he was moving on only instinct, Sae was the only one who would keep up with that, so his teammates really couldn't give him a good pass. And Rin had to drastically change his mindset in order to elevate his team to even close to the level that they were at with Sae. And this did work, you know, his team started scoring a lot more, and not only him scoring, you know, he's able to assist his teammates and let them score. But this playstyle did end up kind of slowing down Rin's ego a little bit. And in the words in the novel, Rin held back the him who was trying to steal the goal with everything he had, using that sense of smell for the goal and assembling an attack as a team plan. And this is exactly what Jinpachi Ego was talking about when he said that Japanese soccer has always been weak even though their teamwork is the best in the world. But this is where Rin's new weapon came into play. Since he had to orchestrate the team so well, he learned to capture the whole picture of the field like a drone on top of the field rather than just seeing his best image, which led to him being seen as kind of a marionette with strings attached to his teammates controlling all their movements. And ironically, when Rin stopped his progression as a striker, his whole team's level was raised, which basically made him a carbon copy of Sae, just a worse version. This whole thing about suppressing ego is something I talked about during my Why Japan Soccer is Failing video, and it's basically because of examples like these. A bunch of people appear with amazing talents to be a striker, and Japan, being a very friendly country, simply denies all of this and basically forces them to play for the team. And we actually get to see that Sae probably felt this as well, because when Rin was doing this, he comments that this might have been what Sae was feeling as he was playing with him in the team. And of course, what this would lead to is that Sae actually had his ego suppressed, much like Isagi and Aiku. And although Sae did have an ego to be the best midfielder in the world, his striker mentality completely died out. This would explain his weird reaction to the Blue Lock program when he first hears about it, and his ego flares up. The way I interpret this is Sae basically thinking, well, if I couldn't do it, who really can? And him really wondering if this country could really produce an amazing forward. But now we can get into what you can call the Day of Reckoning. the day that Sae Itoshi saw his brother for the first time in 3 years and left him quickly after. Sae comes back to Japan a day early, and when we first see him, he looks very down. The novels even comment on this, calling his expression grim, and Rin even comments that he may have lost some weight. After this comment, Sae talks to Rin, telling him that there's a big world out there, and there are people even more awesome than me. Rin of course doesn't know what this is supposed to mean, and Sae just tells him that he's revised his dream, and he's not going to become the world's best striker, but he's going to be the world's best midfielder. Rin is obviously confused at this idea and doesn't like it at all, and he even quotes Sae saying he's a striker, right? And anything besides that is meaningless, even if it's the best in the world. Sae then replies to Rin, telling him to shut up and telling him that's something someone ignorant would say. This is when Rin gets really heated, and he tells him that he shouldn't give up like that, and he said that they'd fight together. But Sae surprisingly responds with that's right, and that's why he'll be the midfielder and Rin will work as the striker for their team. But not just any striker, the world's best striker. But Rin doesn't want this at all, and tells him that he didn't want to see his big brother like that, and that he's not even the big brother that he dreamed with. Sae then tells Rin that the soccer field is a battlefield, and that he still doesn't get it, but he says if Rin can beat him in a one-on-one, then he'll dream with them once again, but if he wins, then their dream ends here, making this the match that decides their relationship for the rest of the series. They begin playing, and Rin immediately knows that he's gotten better since overseas, and he says that his scissors are very fast. Sae then does a double tap, and Rin says he's even faster than he was in Japan, and his agility's on a whole other level, or rather another dimension. And while Rin is still in awe about how good his brother has gotten, Sae does a magic turn on him and does a nutmeg, saying that in these 4 years, what has Rin been doing? And after Sae scores the first and final goal, also he can become the best in Japan and get scouted just like Sae. He then tells Sae that he tried to replicate him and fight for his team, and just like he promised, he'd become the best in Japan. So why does it have to end like this? If he can't chase his dreams with him, then he has no reason to play soccer. After this, Sae has no words and seems visibly tired or sad that Rin said this, but out of nowhere, he has an almost unnatural turn of moods, telling Rin to give up and that reasoning is so tepid, and he guesses Japan likes to keep things equal and really does turn exceptional talent into mediocre trash. He then tells Rin not to use him as a reason he plays soccer ever again, and that he might be someone special to Rin, he's just an eyesore and a pain in the ass little brother, and ends it off by telling Rin that he doesn't need him in his life anymore. Now if you look at this at face value, it may seem like Sae is a really bad brother for this, basically telling his brother off and telling him he doesn't want to even talk to him anymore just because of some soccer things. But if we look into it, you might not think Sae is actually a really bad brother. But before we get into actually if he's a bad brother or not, let's get into what this led to. Well, for starters, this led to Rin starting to play by himself again and getting his ego back, and basically just playing as a striker once more since Sae told him to never try to replicate him again. This also gave Rin a reason to have an ego since he wants to destroy his brother, who's supposed to be the best midfielder in the world. And finally, it led to Rin joining Blue Lock. In Blue Lock, Rin was able to truly define his ego and sharpen it against other egotistical players such as Isagi and Shido. This allows him to gain rivals and benchmarks for his power, to tell whether or not he's progressing enough, and begin to try to progress more. This also led to Rin joining the Neo Egoist League, allowing him contact with amazing players such as Noah, Lavinio, and even Loki, his master in the Neo Egoist League currently. And if we're being honest, for someone who wants to be a best striker in the world, these opportunities aren't something to scoff at whatsoever. They're actually something you would strive for. For this reason alone, I think that Sae Itoshi isn't particularly a bad brother, but only if you agree with my reasoning that Sae was pretty much acting when he told Rin to piss off and things like that. If we go back to what I was talking about with Sae's unnatural change in mood when he told him to piss off, his eyes before he says that look very disappointed and sad that Rin told him that he's trying to replicate him. And the reason for this could very well be that Sae knows firsthand that this completely stunts growth as a striker. And of course Rin knows that as well. But since his brother did it, he obviously thinks it's something he should do, since his brother was also able to reach the overseas level and reach greater heights than he was able to. But Sae basically telling Rin off for doing this basically makes him deviate from this path and want to gain his ego back once more, and gives him a true reason to become the best striker in the world. Another case of something like this happening in fiction I could really cite for you would be Itachi and Sasuke. At first glance, Itachi killing his entire clan and making Sasuke rewatch that moment over and over again may just seem like something that shouldn't happen and make you a bad brother, right? And to an extent it still does. I'm definitely not excusing Itachi's actions, but given the choices he really had no choice. That is, if he wanted to stop a war and save his little brother. But not only did Itachi doing this stop a war, it also gave his brother a pretty clear goal to strive for, and this ultimately ended up working out for Itachi since Sasuke basically did exactly what he planned. And he even allowed Sasuke to take the fame for killing him in order for him to be thought as a hero. And even though everything didn't go exactly as he planned, everything that he did were for good intentions. I believe that eventually it will be revealed that this is similar for Sae, and that the reason he told Ren off for trying to replicate him is because he doesn't want him to lose the ego that he once had. And the reason that he came back and told Ren he wants to be the best midfielder and he wants would be because Sae doesn't have the potential anymore to become the best striker. Since he spent years with Ren and his team, making his playstyle more of a midfielding playstyle, and completely destroying his ego as a striker, and that would have probably happened to Ren as well if he could continue doing what he was doing. But that's all I have for today. If you enjoyed the video, make sure of course like and subscribe to my channel, since I make vlog content quite often and it's pretty high quality.